Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Sky, like the big blue sky, and today I'm going to walk you through a prospecting workflow that I built, and I'm going to take you through the process of how we pulled and scraped the list from LinkedIn to automating the research, identifying if they're a good fit, finding the right contacts at the company, all the way to writing the actual email. So without further ado, let's dive in. I'm actually going to start in Sales Navigator just for a little bit of context here. And I probably wouldn't do it this exact way now that I've built this process out completely, and I'll explain why, but I want to show you how I did this the first time around. So I built an account search in Sales Navigator, pretty basic filters. Where the rubber meets the road is really with the Boolean. And I added a whole bunch of stuff in here. I still had, a decent amount of results. Not everybody that made it into this search was a good fit. And so I knew that I would need to refine it a little bit more, but either way, this needed to be scraped. And so this is one of my favorite tools. I use the Clay Chrome extension, and it's their Scrape Anything Chrome extension. It's pretty cool because it already understands how LinkedIn Sales Navigator is built out, and it'll just start picking up all these properties for you. And so as you can see here, it says see all 9 rows. I just start scrolling down, and it's going to start picking up on all of these rows. And so for this initial process build, I took 300 companies, hit add to workspace, and then it just pulled it straight into a Clay table. So once I had it in a Clay table, this is basically the company view. And to give you a big picture of what's going to happen here, we're going to enrich the companies first. And then once we've identified the ones who are a fit and we found some good research, then we're going to find the right contacts at the company that we want to go after. And so the actual base view here, as you can see, it had quite a bit more companies than, so we had 300 rows and not all of them were a good fit. And so the first thing that I did was I enriched the companies in Clay, and it automatically does this. It pulls in information about the company, like the description on their bio, the website, all kinds of stuff that you can use, and it pulls it into the table for you. And then from there, I immediately fed that into OpenAI to further refine the targeting and make sure that they're a good fit based on my client's criteria. And so what I also did here for you guys is all of the prompts that are built into this table, actually put it into this sheet, and it's going to be linked down below. I put them into this sheet with I kind of templatized it for you. One, because I can't just show you exactly what I did for my client, but the principles are still the same. So you should be able to just copy and paste this stuff in for your use case. So I'm going to toggle back and forth here because OpenAI and Clay sometimes takes a little while to load. But in order to identify whether or not someone was a fit or the company was a fit, the prompt that we used was, I'm going to provide you with information about a company from their LinkedIn bio, and I want you to determine if they're a good fit for our list. The criteria that makes them a good fit are, and then you just describe all the criteria that makes them a good fit in detail. The criteria that would not be a fit are things like, and then you describe what makes them not a fit. And you want to be as industry specific as humanly possible. Don't be general, be as specific as humanly possible. It's okay if the company does one of the things included on the not a fit criteria, as long as they still focus on things in the good fit criteria. So an example here, we were going after real estate developers, and some real estate developers do single family and they do multifamily. And for my client's product, they don't want to work with developers that only do single family, but if they do both, or they do multifamily or commercial, then that's okay. And so we had to distinguish between the two to try and get the most juice out of the squeeze in the list. And then in your completion, only provide me with fit or not a fit or unknown. Don't provide me with any other completion outside of the 3 that I just provided. Tree, do not provide me with the completion until you've double checked your work. Here's information about the company. And so what these brackets are, these are basically the data that you're feeding in to Clay. So we're pulling in the description as well as the specialties from their LinkedIn profile. So this is the description, and then the specialties are here. We're pulling both of those things in to give the AI more information. And then another big part of this, because I think the AI just starts to get a little wonky if you don't give it examples for certain tasks. And the problem that I wanted to solve was having really specific language. And it just wasn't, it'd be like, based on the information provided, this is a fit. And I'm like, no, just tell me it's a fit. And so you can solve for a lot of that stuff instead of like messing with the prompt. You just give it examples. And so you want to give it like prompt completion pairs. I used GPT-4, and then I told it to not be creative for this task. And from there, the ones that are fit are brought into their own view, which the companies. And then from there, this is where we start doing the Google search. And so we've got two columns here. We've got Search Google and Search Google One. And the reason for that is because we're testing two different Google searches. They're getting us different results. I can't decide which one I like better. So we're going to test both of them. And I put one of these in here for you. So the Google search query that we used was cite. So this basically says in your results, provide back results that are like this website, and then keywords to look for our use case in specific. And then a lot of the results will return like domains that don't fit. It'll be like, jobs domains, or like terms and conditions page on the website, or there were like Zoom info links populating. And so we use this to get rid of those. We also got a bunch of PDFs that were populating in this search. And so we got rid of that file type in the search. And then finally, we wanted stuff that was really recent and relevant, especially. So this was real estate development. And so we wanted to pull in information ideally about the sale of or acquisition of or quarterly report, like recent news about new projects, developments, what have you. And so we set a date for when like the web page should have been posted after. So there's two different Google searches. I just showed you this one. And basically from there, once the Google search happens, we selected to only bring in two results. And so each of those URLs is populated here, URL 1, URL 2. We scraped those URLs, and then we fed that text into OpenAI to summarize the web page as well. So this grouping of scraped text and summarization, that's associated with this column. This one, where it seems like there's no Google searches, those ones are associated with this grouping here. And so I'm going to scroll down just so you can see. This is where they start. So as you can see here, it's the same structure. It's URL 1, URL 2, scraped website, and then we summarize. And so for the prompt that we use to summarize is here. So we give it the role. So put yourself in the shoes of a world-class VP of business development, and you're an expert in the real estate industry. I want you to provide a summary about a company called blank. And so this is where, again, in Clay, you're going to have these like tokens. So you're going to pull in the company name that was scraped, and you're going to put that in there following this strict set of rules. First, I will provide you with text about the company, but the text, and this prompt took a lot of finagling as well. And so you'll kind of see where I tried to beat it into submission. So the text, so we're like scraping this text, and unless we're going to manually go through the links, which kind of defeats the purpose, we're not going to know whether or not the search results are actually associated with the company that we want it to be. And so tried to get that to like weed itself out with AI. So like task number one here is that the text might not be associated with the company name. And so it might be associated with a completely unrelated company. So first, I want you to determine if the text provided is actually associated with company name. If it is not, I want you to only output wrong company in your completion and end the task. If you determine the text provided is the wrong company, do not provide me with any other text in your completion other than wrong company. If the company name in the context seems different from the company I provided, it is likely the wrong company. So it would like say, like if the names were close, it would just assume that it was the right company, but it was actually the wrong company. So we had to put that in there. The rule I just described is the most important rule and should not ever be broken. So we're like really emphasizing this one. If you break that rule, you failed everything. I don't know why this worked. It just wasn't working. I put that line in there and it just started working. I was like, that's cool. Please double check you followed that rule before moving on to the next rule. If you see the information I provided is actually related to company, then do the task. Then I want you to provide a summary with organized analysis and insights. Make sure to include as much proof, numbers, metrics, etc. into your analysis to make it credible. Organize it into sections that make sense. If you see metrics in the context that seem to be in error, make sure to notate in your analysis metrics likely presented in error. So that one is because some of the pages that we're scraping are like reporting on the performance of like a real estate portfolio, and sometimes the scrape wouldn't actually pull in the numbers. And so like on a website, it would say we produced 30% returns. but then the scraped text would be 0. And obviously that's not right. And so putting that in there kind of like it helped the AI like kind of determine that some of the metrics weren't reliable. But what I want to pass on to you if you're watching this is that like, yes, you can copy and paste this like summarization prompt, but I hope what you can see is that like it does take quite a bit of like trial and error, really working through to like fine tune the results. And when I go through and I build something like this, I will like make the prompt. I test it in ChatGPT just because like it's really hard to edit stuff in Clay, and I will test it. I will scrape the data. I'll copy and paste it from like ChatGPT into, or from Clay into ChatGPT, and I'll test it as if it was like built out in Clay. And then once I feel like I'm like really nailing it with the prompt, then I'll bring it over into Clay and I'll try and replicate it. And it doesn't always work when I try to replicate it in Clay. So you might have to continue sort of finagling it. And I will test it on like, depending on how on the money it is, 5 to 20 different rows before I just like push it to run. Be as thorough as you possibly can. Here's info about the company. And then I should put the title of the webpage and the body text, and then didn't really need any examples. It did a pretty good job with this. So that is that. And then what I did here, because it will tell you like, oh, this link is the wrong company. And so essentially I had this be a formula because I didn't want it. All of this data was going to be parsed over and then automatically fed into OpenAI to generate the personalization. I didn't want to have to sift through these before running the icebreaker completions, the personalization completions. And so the formula here basically says like, if this column contains the words wrong company, then don't output the text. So it's taking a look, these formulas here, it's taking a look to look for this exact language. And if it finds it, then it's not outputting the text, which is important because we're going to use that text to personalize. So now we've got everything. We've like automated the research. We've summarized it. At this point, we got to find contacts, and I'm not going to do this again, but in Clay, once you've got companies, you can go, hey, find people, and you can start to build out your search. And so I just added all the titles that I wanted to go after, and I excluded the titles that I didn't want to go after, and then gave it some confines, and I went, preview people, send that into another table. And that's what brought this over here. And so not everything is going to be visible on this table because I am going to be posting this on YouTube, and I can't have emails in YouTube as far as I know. So you won't be able to see everything, but 99% of the stuff is going to be here. But it basically, it brought in the profiles, and then it didn't actually bring in data properly from the company table. So I had to run an action to pull that data in. And then from there began the enrichment process. And so, we've got all the titles and whatnot. And at first, I used my Apollo API key and pulled in these contacts. And then basically, if the, and then Never Bounce as well is hidden here because it shows their email. So I used Never Bounce and Debounce in this table because for some reason, Clay was registering my API key for just like the Never Bounce action, but it wasn't registering my API key on the waterfall action, and Debounce was already built in. So I could like come in here and I could go to add enrichment. I can go to waterfalls, and then I could pick this enrichment, and it's going to like automatically have, all of this set, and it picks Debounce as the validation provider. So essentially, if I wanted to, I could like, map these fields, push play, and then it's going to look from this database, then this database, then this database, if it doesn't find it in the previous databases. And then before it spits out, hey, this is the email to use, it's going to validate it using Debounce first. And this is what I mean. For some reason, I went to go select Never Bounce, wasn't picking up my API key in here. So I was like, whatever, screw it. So first I used my own Apollo API key, then and then I ran it through Never Bounce. If the results were not valid, then this waterfall enrichment happened. So if it does not equal valid, then go ahead and run this first action. And then the rest of these are based off of whether or not this is run or true. And so it's going to go through, it doesn't always find everybody, but it's going to look for their emails. And as you can see, the summaries And the company bio, it's already pulled into the table from the company table. And then we've got the icebreaker, and some of the other columns are hidden because it's the email. But basically the rules that I gave for the icebreaker was like the email has to be found in this column here. And the email is only going to be in the column that's hidden here if it is valid. So email has to be found there, and one of these columns has to be filled in. So it didn't pull in research for like every single one, but either way, we've still got the company bio as like a fallback, and some of these it looks like are still trying to run. But what was the prompt here? And unfortunately, I can't show you the actual like email examples. This is for an active client, so I can't show you what their emails are. But I mean, like, this is basically the prompt that I used, and then basically the structure of the email was like a personalized first line that's an observation, and then the second line is basically talking about how my client's solution can help to solve the problem or the observation. There's like a conversational question as the call to action. So the prompt: put yourself in the shoes of a world-class VP of business development. You're an expert in the real estate industry. So the role again. Then we move into the objective. I'm going to tell you what the company you sell for does and information about a real estate company. You're going to write a two-sentence cold email following these rules. 1, sentence number 1, make an observation that is solved for by my client's company. So you just put your company in here. It should start like this. And I found that like giving the confines, like a little bit of a constraint here as a sentence starter, is super helpful, or it just has a really big mind of its own. 2, sentence number 2 is how you could potentially help them solve that problem with your company. So you put your company in there again and start that sentence like, I had some ideas on how you could blah, 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 blah. So basically sentence number 1 is like, hey, I read that you just bought this building. That's pretty cool, man. I had some ideas on how we could help you lease that building up faster. So the rest of it are some rules. So don't write any other sentences outside of the first 2 I told you about in the icebreaker sections of the personalization, or add your personalization. I will add more text after your lines, so make sure they are written in a way that can naturally flow to the next line, but do not write the other lines. In sentence 1, don't add more than 7 words of personalization. So what I was going for was no more than 10 words per line in lines like 1 and 2. So there's 3, 1, 2, 3. So in line 1, don't add more than 7 words. In sentence 2, don't add more than 6 words. So I had 4 in this one. So I had some ideas, 1, 2, 3, 4 icebreakers. So don't add more than 6. Do not exceed the rule I set for length. Again, do not exceed the word count rules I gave. This is the most important rule. Make sure you tailor the icebreaker section to what you think the job title. So this is where in Clay you map the job title for each row at the company would be interested in solving. Be kind and tactful in your tone when pointing out problems. I found that ChatGPT was being kind of rude and like calling people out. So we had to let it know to be nice. Make sure you communicate as if you're speaking directly to the prospect. Make sure to include evidence from the information I provided you as proof to your claims in your completion. So this was a really helpful piece for the prompt. And this ties in with the summary prompt, where it's like, hey, pull in numbers, because at first with the summarization prompt, it was just like summarizing it without any of the metrics. And so I had to tell it, pull in the metrics. And then in here, I had to remind it again, include evidence from the information I provided you. And I probably could have been more specific here with the prompt, but it ended up working. So there's basically, there's a couple parts here. There's like, all the rules and whatnot that you put in the prompt, and it looks like a lot because it is. And then it's like, here's information about what you do. And if you think about it, how's it going to tailor all this information about the pitch or sorry, about the company that it's personalizing to? How's it going to tailor that to who you are? So you have to give it context. And so within this section, you're going to provide like a thorough and concise explanation of what you do and how you help the persona that you're targeting. So I think it's important not just to describe like, my company does this, but then also describing here are like the buckets of ways that we provide a solution to these problems that they're likely reading about in the Google search. The AI is reading about. And then so after that, it's like, here's information about the company, and this is where you're going to map all the stuff into the cell in Clay. And so it's important to be like really concise, and every word like serves a purpose in your explanation, because you can control the length of that. these are going to be a little bit more variable. And, if you want to use GPT-4, which I recommend for this kind of writing task, you don't get as much like space. You can't use as many tokens. So try to control for the length of your explanation. And then, this section, you get a little bit more liberty. And I added all three because not all of them had it. So it ended up working. But really like important part though, because you can mess with the prompts all day and you're just not going to get that far. Like it's definitely important to do a good job with the prompts, but the examples are going to be like a much like smaller hinge that swings a big door for you. So for this, you have to provide some prompt completion pairs, or your completions are going to be a little bit out of whack. The biggest problem that you'll run into is the word count. If you try to be specific, for some reason, it's just not good at that, and it needs examples. So that's pretty much everything, guys. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything. If you try to implement this, you're trying to think through like, how do I apply this to my business or my use case? I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. Please feel free to message me on LinkedIn. But other than that, I hope this was helpful. I hope it gave you some ideas. Again, this sheet is in the comments on the video down below. And if you got value out of this video, please like and subscribe. It makes sure that I can keep putting together resources like this for you guys. But other than that, I wish you the best of luck, and I'll catch you on the next video.